You cannot just go kill people, massacre people, film yourself, show the whole world that you did it, actually confess to it, and then just sit next to me on a terrace in Brussels and have a coffee next to me and my family. We know that in this genocide, children represent the majority of the victims. The sense of entitlement to murder and the sense that they are untouchable, that they are above any reach of justice. Israel did what Israel does always, denied responsibility, even though basically the whole world caught it red-handed. They still said, oh, it wasn't us. It's the other side who did it.
Welcome to Expert Witness. Today I'm joined by Dyab Abou Jahjah, president of the Hind Rajab Foundation, to discuss his organization's global efforts to hold perpetrators accountable for grave violations of international humanitarian law in Gaza. So far, the foundation has pursued nearly 100 cases against Israeli soldiers across 14 countries. In addition to national prosecutions, the Hind Rajab Foundation is also seeking justice at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The foundation is named in memory of the 6-year-old Palestinian girl Hind Rajab, whose tragic killing by the Israeli army on 29 January 2024 has come to symbolize the broader violations of international law against Palestinians. Dyab, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Your foundation is named after Hind Rajab, the 6-year-old girl whose murder in Gaza has become a symbol of the horrors that Palestinians face. You've even described her as the Anne Frank of Palestine. Can you tell us why you chose her name, what she represents for your mission, and how your work seeks justice for these sort of crimes under the principle of universal jurisdiction?
Well, first of all, about the name, I think it's, a name should be symbolic. This is the whole thing about names, it should represent something that is substantial about the issue at hand, in this case, the genocide in Gaza. And we know that in this genocide, children represent the majority of the victims, which is very peculiar and also very revealing on the nature of the genocidal party, which is the Israeli army and the Israeli state. So it was for us quite natural to make that link in the name of our foundation, not just because children are innocent, because we believe that any civilian is innocent, whether they are a child or a man or a woman. Actually, one of the problems that we are facing is that people only talk about children and women as victims as if you could just kill men, non-combatants, which is like an abomination under international law, because you cannot kill civilians, period, whether they are man, woman, or child. But the fact that children are targeted and that children are actually overrepresented is something that I think says a lot about the mindset, the genocidal mindset that is behind this criminal endeavor. So in that sense, we wanted to give that message. And also the case of Hind herself, how Hind was murdered together with her family, is also very revealing as for the impunity that the Israeli perpetrators are acting with, the sense of entitlement to murder and the sense that they are untouchable, that they are above any reach of justice or accountability. It is very clear because what happened is that basically Hind was killed live on social media, because the whole world was aware that there was a 5-year-old stuck in a car surrounded by dead bodies of her loved ones under fire from an Israeli tank. And the whole world heard the call of Hind and her cousin before her death. And the whole world was aware that the Palestinian Red Crescent was trying to save her, that was dispatching an ambulance to the location. The Israelis were also aware that the world knew that. Actually, a permission was asked to the Israeli army from the Red Crescent to send an ambulance. So, and despite all this, not only Hind was massacred and killed on purpose, also the ambulance was destroyed and the medical workers in it were killed. So this case actually represents the nature of the genocide. There's no debate in this case about, are we talking about combatants? Are there suspicions whether there is a militant or leader of the resistance in the car or in the vicinity? Oh, we did not know that there are children. We did not know that there were civilians. There are no debate about this whatsoever. It's very clear. And still, Israel killed Hind and her family and the ambulance workers. So it's very symbolic. It represents this genocide. And on top of that, Israel did what Israel does always, denied responsibility, even though basically the whole world caught it red-handed. They still said, oh, it wasn't us. It's the other side who did it. So this is, I mean, there's no story. I mean, there are so many dramatic stories and powerful stories. But I still feel that there's no story that captures the injustice and the brutality of this genocide more than the Hind story.
Dyab, what's your vision for using offensive litigation to seek justice for victims like Hind Rajab? We know, for example, your organization is targeting Israeli soldiers, particularly dual nationals in Europe and Latin America. Can you walk us through some of the key cases that you're working on and the legal strategies that you're employing?
Well, the initial part of the vision is the per default status of international law, basically in law. Normally, we shouldn't be working on this. Normally, this is the job of international legal bodies. They should be doing this. States should be doing this, taking this initiative to prosecute perpetrators of war crimes and crimes against humanity. However, we all know this is part of this impunity. I mean, what drove us into action was the presence or the existence of this scandalous impunity related to this genocide. Not only in terms of denying the genocide, not only in terms of being slow on reacting to it, which would be also a problem if it was only that, but also in terms of aiding and abetting the criminal party, giving it weapons, giving it finances, and giving it positive media coverage, and etc. So, this impunity is very provoked us as citizens to say, oh, we're not going to let this happen on our watch unanswered. Maybe we cannot stop it because we do not have the means that states have, and they could stop it. But at least we should do something. And then the idea of offensive litigation was, for us, the logical path, because this is not about defending ourselves. It's not about saying, oh, we're not terrorists, we're not criminals, we don't deserve to be killed. That's not about it. I mean, we're beyond that. This should be not even a debate. This is about saying, oh, these people committed acts that are abhorrent, that are unacceptable, and that should be punished under international law and under national law, not just under international law. So, and since this is not happening, we should push that. We should make it happen. And it was quite a bold idea and an ambitious idea for a bunch of citizens who actually do not have much resources. But at the end of the day, a lot of things demand just action and just courage, and then things will start happening. And this is what we are noticing now. So the idea is justice, seeking accountability. This is the main thing, and holding international legal bodies, but also national, especially national states, responsible at least for the deeds of their own citizens, because as we know, a lot of dual nationals are participating in this genocide. So these states must be held accountable for the actions of their citizens, or allow these states to hold them accountable, clearing themselves, because if they do not hold their own citizens accountable, this makes them complicit. So this is one part of it. And obviously the other part is also going after war criminals wherever they travel, wherever they go. You cannot just go kill people, massacre people, film yourself, show the whole world that you did it, actually confess to it, and then just sit next to me on a terrace in Brussels and have a coffee next to me and my family. Me as justice loving citizen and law-abiding citizen. I cannot be sitting next to bloodthirsty killers and act as if we are just the same. No, we need to hold these people accountable. And this is why we're also going after these war criminals when they travel, when they are tourists. And actually, we're reminding the countries they are visiting, and we're reminding them also and their society that they are war criminals and they are not just normal citizens.
But building a legal case that leads to trial requires a rigorous process of gathering and verifying evidence. Can you walk us through how your team collects evidence of war crimes? For example, what standards you follow to ensure its admissibility in court, and how you connect that evidence to specific perpetrators?
Well, this is maybe the gathering the evidence is the easiest part of it because they're posting this evidence, so we just have to gather what they post. So I don't think this is very complicated. A lot of people have been also sharing their content, and a lot of accounts online are sharing their contents. But this is not the challenge to gather. Evidence is out there. They put it out there. The challenge is to transform this evidence into a legal case. So for us, when we look at videos, we are not just looking at an Israeli soldier filming himself on the top of a destroyed home. We are looking at the crime scene, and we have to look for the crime and try to establish correlation between the perpetrator and the crime, between potential victims and the crime, etc. So this is the most challenging aspect. As for gathering the information, I don't think this is a challenge.
And what challenges have you encountered in bringing cases before European and Latin American courts? Are there, for example, particular legal, political, or logistical obstacles that make prosecuting these cases a bit more difficult?
Well, the main challenge is when it comes to visiting soldiers. Okay, let's talk about two different categories. You have the dual nationals. So these are people who hold the nationalities of, let's say, a certain country, let's say France. So if you go after them in France, it's clear that France has jurisdiction on their actions, right? So this is one category. The second category is that of visiting soldiers who do not hold the nationality of these countries. So the main challenge in that category is for the country to acknowledge jurisdiction, because most countries have the tendency to say, "Oh, this is not our problem. Go with this elsewhere. Go to the ICC, or go to Israel itself. This is not our problem. Okay, the crime was not committed on our territory, and the person is not a national." So this is obviously not always correct on a judicial level, but it's a debate. So we believe that it is the responsibility of any country to uphold international law on its territory. Having a war criminal entering your territory activates your jurisdiction, especially if you are a signatory of the Rome Statute. So in that sense, we believe that we are right and that these jurisdictions are wrong. So we're trying to enter that debate with them, trying to convince them, trying to actually educate them on the fact that they have jurisdiction, they should apply it. Try also to create awareness among the public opinion about that in these countries and globally, because people have to realize that their countries are responsible when war criminals visit them. And if they do not move on them, they are defaulting their responsibility. And that is a choice. When you default your responsibility on something, you are actually supporting the impunity. You are actually participating one way or the other, maybe in the setting of that crime. So therefore, it's an important fight, and we will keep doing this. We will keep filing these cases, even though in order to reach, if the goal was just to reach accountability based on that, maybe one would argue this is a long shot, and maybe we should invest our resources in something else. But I think it's important to keep doing that because we need to change the mindset of prosecutors and judges and eventually also politicians in many countries around the world in terms of how they look at international law. But our main purpose and our main focus remains on the level of the dual nationals. And obviously, this is less publicized at the moment because these cases take a long time, and we are taking our time with them. We are not rushing to file cases against dual nationals. We're rather preparing them slowly so people know us from our actions against the traveling soldiers, right? So these dual national cases do not have that problem of jurisdiction. Why? Because we will file cases against them and their countries. So their countries cannot claim that they have nothing to say about their actions because it's part of national law and not international law. So this is one problem that we do not have then when we will be working against the dual national soldiers. So we are very hopeful that on that second avenue, the dual national soldiers, we will reach judgments and convictions. So we are very hopeful, and we believe that we will. However, the case against the traveling soldiers, the visiting soldiers, will continue because it is also part of that accountability strategy.
Can you maybe share any cases that you consider a success story, even if, for example, they didn't lead to the arrest of traveling soldiers? How do you measure success in your litigation efforts beyond just securing convictions?
But to speak in terms of success in the context of this genocide is very difficult because obviously the price that was paid is enormous, and I don't think even a conviction would not really suffice to render full justice to the victims and to all of us actually who are affected by this genocide. So but of course, I understand your question in terms of the strategy itself, in terms of achieving some wins against the war criminals, and I believe that yes, we have already, even with that let's say more shaky. Like the cases against the traveling soldiers, the visiting soldiers, that is on more shaky legal grounds, let's say, or contested legal grounds. Even there, we already had two major breakthroughs. The first one was less publicized, was in Cyprus, where the prosecutor opened an investigation against an Israeli soldier after a case that we filed against him. And that forced the Israelis to smuggle him out of the country. And they communicated about it openly that they did that. So that was actually the first breakthrough where not just we filed the case and we communicated about it and we created that pressure. Actually, we filed the case, we communicated about it because otherwise nothing would have happened. And we forced actually by the strength of the case, the prosecution to open an investigation to say, oh, we will investigate this guy. So that was a major breakthrough. But then later, a few weeks later in Brazil, in a similar case, this went beyond an investigation of a prosecution into a judge order. So actually, the prosecutor opened the investigation, passed a request to a judge. The judge ordered the federal police to probe an Israeli war criminal that was on Brazilian soil. And that was a major breakthrough for many reasons, because it's a court order, it's an order of a judge, meaning that arrest could be ensued after that. Secondly, because such a decision is not a formality, such a decision is actually a form of indictment, more or less, even though it is still a probe. But a judge will never issue that unless he or she believed that the content of the file is justified and that the person in question is a war criminal. And third, and maybe a bit more technically, because a judge in a state and a national level decided to act upon the Rome Statute without reference from the ICC, which is the first time that has ever happened. And this sets a precedent, which is something that as I said, we're trying to introduce that as, we have an approach into educating actually legal bodies in terms of the fact that this is possible. And we are facing rejection of that because this is not the habit of applying international law locally. So that judge took that decision and set a precedent, actually agreeing with us, saying, oh yes, we can. So this is important therefore too.
And Dyab, in addition to national prosecutions, your organization has also filed a complaint before the International Criminal Court in The Hague against Israeli soldiers, submitting around 8,000 pieces of evidence. How does this legal action differ from your work under universal jurisdiction? And what impact do you hope it will have in holding these soldiers accountable at an international level?
Well, the ICC has a different functioning. The ICC works with what it calls information. Actually, you inform the ICC about crimes or criminals, right? So you provide them with these. The case for the ICC is actually informing the prosecutor. It's telling the prosecutor, look, this is what happened, and these are the proofs. Do something about it. This is the case to the ICC. And when we sent that, actually, we sent it together, but actually these are 1,000 individual cases. So each one of them is against an individual that is named, his crimes described, and with the evidence proving these crimes. So we had different goals, and I believe we did achieve these goals. First and foremost, it was at a time when the ICC still did not issue the arrest warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant. So we wanted to strengthen the argument because at that moment there were discussion internally because the prosecution had asked for them and the judges of the ICC had to decide whether to issue them or not. So we wanted to strengthen the opinion pro issuing the arrest warrants by making it, making the proof go beyond the persons of Netanyahu and Gallant and giving them an insight into the scale of that genocide and of the crimes committed. So I think this probably helped the case for issuing the arrest warrants. Secondly, we wanted to archive this information on the record in an international body. And this is very important. When you file cases like that, you are archiving, whether on the national level or international level. This will remain there in the archives. And why is this important? First of all, to preserve that, beyond the capability of an organization like ours, which are always limited. So when we give this information to the ICC, they are safe. They remain there. They are on the record officially in a legal body. Secondly, because crimes against humanity, they cannot be, do not lose their relevance or pertinence by time. You can prosecute these crimes even after 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Time doesn't matter. So it's unlike, for example, common crimes or crimes against individuals like of natural, criminal law that prescribe after a period of time, mostly 10 years, sometimes 15 years. The crimes against humanity remain. And so archiving them is very important because imagine the geopolitical situation does not allow this to happen now and allows it to happen within 20 years. Well, these things will be on the record still in 20 years at the ICC. Maybe not with us. Maybe the HRF will not exist anymore in 20 years. Maybe not, but the ICC probably will. So this is how we, this is the motivation.
Given that the ICC typically prioritizes cases against senior leaders, are you expecting the court to issue arrest warrants for these soldiers, or is your goal more about setting a legal precedent and building pressure for accountability?
Not through the ones of the ICC. I don't expect that because the ICC is known. But as I said, that case served a purpose, and that was fine. But when we talk in the ICC is specialized in issuing arrest warrants for high-profile leadership figures, right? This is their MO. This is how they operate. So we have filed cases to the ICC against other people, like, for example, Major General Hassan Alian, the head of the guy who was supervising the policy towards famine in the Gaza Strip and the attacks on hospitals. And he was recently in Rome, so we filed a case against him at the ICC. And this is the kind of profile we expect the ICC to issue arrest warrants against, and they might. And also we filed a case to the ICC against Moshe Tetro, who was actually the second in command, and he was on the ground in Gaza executing the policies on these things. And he's now a military attaché in Belgium. So we expect the ICC, and he has immunity by the fact of him being now appointed as a diplomat. So we cannot follow him under Belgian law because he has immunity. But the ICC can issue an arrest warrant against him, and this is very important. Because this guy was actually doing this thing, because if you look at the arrest warrants that the ICC issued against Netanyahu and Gallant, and you ask yourself the question, what was the argumentation? Why did they issue these warrants? There are two pillars of the crimes that they are actually, indicted for, especially Netanyahu. The first one is, the weaponization of famine and hunger, which is part of genocidal policies. And the second is the attacks on hospitals. So actually, Netanyahu and Gallant were indicted for these two things. Alian and Tetro are the ones who are executing these two things on the ground. So it's very logical and actually a direct consequence, should be a direct consequence of the warrants against Netanyahu and Gallant to issue warrants for Alian and for Tetro. So in that sense, we are hopeful that the ICC will eventually issue arrest warrants for them.
And Dyab, are you hopeful, or do you believe there's hope in the near future that Israeli soldiers or those you're targeting, for example, will face trial anywhere in the world for their actions?
I don't think it will be anytime soon, no. In that sense, no. But it will come. I'm hopeful in that sense. Not just I'm hopeful, I have faith that this moment is coming. However, we have to realize that this is a battle. I call it always a battle of a generation. This is not something that we should look at in short term. We have to build, and we keep building. It's like, we have to swarm them with cases continuously. I mean, we have 8,000 files. We have to go after all of them. I think we already filed, I don't know, a part of the 1,000 to the ICC, on the national level. We maybe have filed like 100 or something, so just to give you a perspective of the task at hand. So, and also, I believe in order to reach a final, form of justice, I think we need time to pass. We need things to shift. Also geopolitically on the world scale, I think things will change. I think this genocide is inducive to that change. It created awareness in the minds of a lot of young people across the planet. And I think these people would need time to grow and be in charge of some important places in this in the power dynamics in the world. So whether it's in the media or politics or judiciary even, so I think it's coming. So the Hind Rajab Foundation looks at this task as that of a generation. Try to build for the future. Try to plan on the long term without impeding our action on the short term, because the downside of this way of thinking is many people will believe, since it's a long-term thing, we will do nothing and we'll just wait for it. No, I think we have to work as if we could achieve it today, and we are doing this. We work with this sense, always with the sense of urgency, but at the same time, we don't get frustrated easily because our scope or our perspective is long-term. So it's a tough, maybe sometimes it's a tough exercise, because we are human beings at the end of the day, and we all sometimes can get discouraged or frustrated, but we are aware of it, at least on the rational level, and we try to keep that idea very present in our actions and our thoughts.
Thank you very much, Dyab. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
You're welcome.